Good morning, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is March 24th, 2024. This is episode 116, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers, stand-up comedian, actor, and improviser, documenting my journey to the top and just figuring out this crazy dream and life as I know it, as it unfolds in real time. So this feels a little odd because I am recording this Saturday night, although I release it Sunday morning. However, and that's actually when I usually record these is the night before, and then I release them in the morning. But yesterday I didn't do that, so I actually filmed and released in the afternoon, and now I'm recording again. So it almost feels like, to me, I've done two podcasts in a day. And yesterday was somewhat uneventful, or at least uneventful in terms of how I had planned the day to turn out. So I started the day doing some work for a client of mine, and my plan was to go write all night. I was just like, I'm going to go sit in a booth somewhere in a restaurant, and I'm going to write for several more hours to try to figure out where I need to go with my comedy, because it's not coming to me. And those of you who have listened recently know that I try to write a bunch of new material that just doesn't seem to be working, and so I'm putting that on the shelf. I started to write some new ideas. And so then what had happened was, literally right before I'm about to take off to go do some writing, I get a text from a friend of mine who, she and I have an interesting friendship, because we were introduced on Facebook by a mutual friend years ago, like 6-7 years ago, when I was still living in LA. And she had some dreams and plans to come out to LA herself. And so she reached out to me on Facebook, hey, I want to move to LA. And then, so we just sort of chatted online for a couple of years, because things kept happening in her life that prevented her from getting to LA. And then finally, she makes it out there. And so she actually stayed at my place for a little while, just to kind of get things figured out with LA. So we've had an interesting friendship over the years, and she's had some pretty difficult family stuff happening or whatever. So it's the type of thing to where I wouldn't hear from her for months and months, but we would always sort of check in with each other just to see how each other's doing. And that's been the case over the last year or so. She's been taking care of her mom. And so her mom needed constant attention. And so she never really had time to hang out, but, we would text every now and again. And so I get a text from her informing me that her mom has passed, and had passed yesterday morning. And so I just was like, what do you need? You need some company, whatever. And she's like, yeah. So I ended up heading over to her place, picking her up, and then just sort of taking her out. And, we grabbed some eats, and then went to a music store and jammed on some instruments, and then went to go see a movie. And it was interesting. She's doing fine, by the way. It was one of those things where it was actually more of a relief. And she said it was very peaceful and very beautiful. So she seemed to be doing okay. What was interesting is how she just talked about how it's just been years and years and years since she's been free to just go out. It was it was interesting as the night was progressing. She's like, man, I can't believe that I'm just out on a Saturday night and just going to dinner. And going to a movie. Like, that was very different for her because she has been so involved in taking care of her family, which really encompassed all of her time and energy. So that ended up being my evening. I didn't get much writing done. What was funny is, I say it was funny, I was actually a little frustrated, was I started to tell her about some of my new material, and she didn't like it. I'm just going, I mean, I haven't even told any of the jokes yet. I just shared some of the ideas and the premises. We kind of got in this discussion of, and how, she didn't see how that would be funny, or expressed how she thought it was problematic where I was even going with it. I'm just like, okay, what's happening here? Have I become so detached from myself or from comedy that I can't even write funny stuff anymore? Or is this a situation to where I'm shifting and I need to double down and trust myself and trust my instincts? Or is it like everything else in life where it's a little bit of both? Well, I don't know if everything in life is a little bit of both, but it seems to be that way, whenever you're involved in black and white thinking. But again, I mean, I was literally just sharing with her a couple premises, and she's like, well, where's the joke in that? I'm like, well, I don't know yet. That, I haven't even told this. I just wrote it down. This is just what was in my mind. And I started just writing some new routines. And I felt myself get a little defensive. I felt myself get a little like, you want to know what? I'm kind of done being criticized and critiqued for my comedy, and people telling me, this probably has to do a lot with the more that I've been visible online. I posted so many jokes, so many routines, and I get a lot of, online just like, this isn't funny, don't quit your day job, and blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is, I haven't quit my day job. So yeah, again, I've brought this up many times on this podcast, but it's difficult to know when and how to receive feedback and criticism. Like, when is that effective, and when is it me having to, trust my instinct and hold to my guns, as it were. Because a lot of times, especially people who aren't stand-up comedians, I don't think non-stand-up comedians really understand the process that goes into having a funny stand-up comedy bit. I think there's a bit, and maybe I'm not being fair to the world or whatever, or non-comics, but it seems that they feel that funny stand-up comedy is all spontaneous, and that a comic is either just a funny person or they're not a funny person, and the reason that they're able to stand on stage and be funny is because they're just funny, and it's spontaneous and almost instinct. I think maybe what a lot of people who aren't actually comedians themselves maybe don't quite get or understand or are aware of is how much writing and refining and experimentation and failure go into finding a funny stand-up comedy bit. I think Seinfeld said he wrote like 3 hours a day. Don't quote me on that, but he wrote every single day, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, for years and years and years and years and years and years. So when people watch Jerry Seinfeld, back in the 80s, all they hear was like, what's the deal with spring-loaded faucets? And the people go like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. He's talking about spring-loaded faucets. And it sounds like Jerry just kind of came up with that in the moment, in that stand-up routine, off the top of his head. What they didn't know is that every single one of those routines was meticulously poured over and tested at countless comedy shows. So when someone's just like, oh, well, that's not funny. Well, that's not going to work. It's like, first of all, you don't know because anybody who's never stood on stage and done stand-up comedy, it's like you have no idea. And especially when I'm just sort of talking through things, comedy isn't intellectual. It's like when I'm talking about a bit, I'm talking about it intellectually. And so, when I was talking to her, she's processing it intellectually. Oh, well, that's not funny. Oh, well, here's everything wrong with that. I'm going, well, first of all, you don't actually know because I'm not actually performing it comedically. I'm just talking about the premise. And, there really is no such thing as an off limits or an unfunny premise. Some are obviously going to be more controversial, but take any controversial premise, or that would be deemed controversial. Take, politics, take religion, take, whatever it is. There's probably a comic who knows how to make that premise funny. Because there's so much more that goes into what actually is presented on stage in any comedic that you're seeing who is on stage. The reason they are there is because of the years and years and years of work they've done to refine material. And a lot of times, depending on who you're watching, you could be watching a comic who is doing jokes that they've written 6, 7, 8 years ago that they refined way back then. And because they know it works, they keep telling it now. And I know they do that because I do that. I've done that recently. The shows I did over the last weekend where I was trying a bunch of new stuff that wasn't working, I ended one of my sets with one of my token bits, actually one of the first bits I ever wrote almost 10 years ago, because it kills every time. And so, because the rest of my set wasn't going that great, I'm like, well, I want to end on something that's good. But that's the shit we have to wade through to really hone in and refine and find new material. Now, like I have been talking about, if you try it enough and it keeps on not working, well, then you have a choice. You can keep trying to tinker with it, refine it or whatever, or you just have to say, I'm going to put this whole idea on the shelf and I'm going to try to find something else. So again, when I started writing, I'm just trying to find something else. And I'm like, not even the process. And so I was just talking about what I want to talk about. And so it was interesting to feel me get a little defensive because I'm going, artists at work here. It's like, I'm not even, I'm just talking about what it is I want to talk about. Well, where's the joke in that? I don't know yet. I came up with this last night. Sorry that I don't have a fully fleshed idea and premise that you will find funny just by me talking about it. Anyway, obviously I've got some bitterness just because of how much I've been. My comedy has come under attack, especially over this last year when I really made some strides to be a lot more honest, really talking about my life. I told stories about my relationship, that I was in, which got a lot of people mad at me, including my ex. And then I got, I don't know if I probably told this story, but she threatened to sue me, sent me a cease and desist letter. I lost a couple friendships. I had other people when I started going down that route. I had a buddy of mine who watched some of my stand up and called me. It was like, I can't really support. You're being pretty dark, and I can't really support that comedy. And I think you're really talented if that's the route you go. It was kind of this like, well, if you want to go that route, good luck to you. Just like, okay. And that material has ended up being some of my funniest, most real material. Once I dialed it in, he happened to see it when it was brand new and it was still very raw and it wasn't that funny yet. And I had to work my ass off and fail a lot and risk not being funny. It's like I could have just kept doing all the old stuff. I have plenty of old stuff that works. I could have just kept doing that over and over and over and over again. But I am trying to challenge myself to move forward, to create, to write new stuff, and to take risks and to take challenges, and to challenge myself. And that's what I'm doing. So I have to more and more, as I'm being more transparent, as I'm putting myself online more, and as I'm seeking a dream that ultimately will drastically increase my visibility and a feeling that the public then has the right to interact and criticize, I'm only going to be getting more of that. And so it's good to be aware of that. So one of my good comedy friends, his name is Drew Lynch. He blew up after his America's Got Talent performance a handful of years ago, and he does this funny social media thing that I think is so funny, and I love watching it. And he has some pretty significant visibility. So I mean, he's kind of viral because he's that level of fame. So like everything that he posts, he already has a real significant viewership of followers. And the other day I watched him do one of his social media things. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, this guy is so effing brilliant, and he's so funny, and he's so creative, and he's so real. And I kind of get a little like, and I kind of hung out with him, so I get a little like, I don't know. It just kind of makes me feel like, wow. And he hangs out with me. Oh, I get a little like, I don't know what it is. And he had like 500 comments on this video, and I was like, oh, I wonder what people say about this. And so I just click in, and everyone is like, you're so funny, you're so funny, you're so funny. And then there was this one guy who commented on his video who was like, yeah, I remember when Drew was funny, didn't laugh once, or something like that. It's going. And then that created this thread of, and I'm just going, nobody on this thread could touch Drew Lynch on any comedic plane. I'm like, I would love to see this guy. I would love to knock on this guy's door. Be like, hey, I understand that you don't think Drew is funny, or that video that he posted isn't funny, or that he's not funny anymore. So evidently you think you're in a position to, first of all, state objectively what is or isn't funny, which is really funny how people word that to me. It's like, this isn't funny, as opposed to like, I don't find this funny, which are two very different things. One is like, objectively, I have determined that funny has not happened in this video, as opposed to subjectively, I have not found this video to be funny, which just blows my mind. Like, I don't know how any human being on the planet could watch that video and not laugh their arses off. But, I'm sure art is always subjective. There's people who think Taylor Swift sucks, sure, great. The fact that he would comment to me is a little suspicious. It's like, well, why did you watch it? It's like, I watched it just so I could let him know that I didn't find it funny. It's like, whatever. But I would just love to see that guy, assuming he's a real person, by the way, and it's not some Russian bot, just be like, dude, show me one funny thing you have ever done in your life. Show me one funny thing. Show me one video. Let's go to a stand-up comedy club. Let's put you on stage. But that's neither here nor there. Drew is so funny. And I'm so funny too. I'm just in a weird little funk here. It's like, last year I was really writing from some very traumatic pain, and I was alchemizing that pain into comedy. And now I'm not in a state of pain. Kind of weird. Life is overall like really great. And I have great friends and great family, and, I have a place to live, and I have some income, and I get to pursue my dreams. And so, so it's kind of interesting is I don't have that sort of dark element that I am alchemizing comedically, but there's something very real to it, which I think the audience latches onto, or was latching onto. And so now I'm not writing from a painful, traumatic standpoint. I'm actually trying to write from a like happy, positive standpoint, and then I'm trying to find the irony in that, and still trying to expose my own weaknesses and stuff like that. And, maybe it just doesn't have the teeth, and so I need to find where, I don't know. I may just have to reinvent myself as an artist. So anyway, that was a lot of incoherent rambling for March 24th, 2024. So that's where I'm at in my journey and in my dream. And so much love to my friend and what she's going through. Glad we got to hang out. And so much love to all of you for listening wherever you're at in your journey and in your dreams and in your artistic pursuits. I hope you are navigating it as effectively and as peacefully and as joyfully as you can, because I know the journey is no joke. Isn't that ironic? All right, everybody. I love you all so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.